Bye, Squirt.
I love you.
Love you, Squirt.
Okay. At 2 o'clock, I get to take some morphine. So,
Oh, that's great. So we got about 42 minutes, and
so
then the dialogue will be over.
no, we can keep talking after I take the morphine.
Oh, I know, but that's when it gets funny.
It would just get more interesting.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll try to make sure I don't fall asleep. So, all right. So I asked you to do a podcast with me, and specifically, I wanted to hit on the topic of suffering. You know, the reason I guess why it came up for me is because, we've had several conversations about big events that I've been doing that you've really helped me, I guess, as far as the suffering part. The first one was we were training for a hunting trip, and you introduced me to embrace the suck. I'd never heard that expression before, and you and I were walking up. Was it Lone Pine?
Probably.
Yeah, I think we were walking up Lone Pine, and I was fat guy breathing, huffing and puffing and everything, and I remember saying something about like I never liked hiking or anything like that before, but I love the pursuit of going after an animal and hunting and that kind of stuff. I said, but the hiking part is the part that I can't stand. And you were like, oh yeah, well you just kind of embrace the suck with it, and it was like. I had no idea what you were talking about. So explain to people what the embrace the suck thing is.
Well, first I got to go back to what you just said.
Okay.
You're like I hate hiking, but I love chasing animals.
Yes.
Well, the vast majority of hunting is really hiking in the woods with friends.
Yep.
Okay, so do you not see the I hate hiking, but I like hunting? Like, already right there's some juxtaposition of as long as you're framing what the mental outlook matters, right? And so this is the embrace the suck part.
Yep.
So the I don't like to hike, but I like to hunt. Okay, but what's the difference? For the movement portion, I'd argue that it's all the same, right? But it's just how you frame it. So when you're looking at the whole embrace the suck thing, and this probably goes back to the whole SEAL heritage of the only easy day was yesterday.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because yesterday's over,
Yeah.
right? Now today is today. It's a fresh day. You gotta go out and push yourself and do the thing. So there's lots of things out there that aren't fun.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you're anything that's worth doing, and there's a lot of stuff out there, right? The whole, the what is it? The challenge is the way, or whatever. I'm having a senior moment there. The obstacle is the way,
Yes.
right? And that whole stoic philosophy, that idea of, the idea of discipline and not giving in to all the carnal pleasures. And this goes back, throughout history, throughout cultures, right? Whether it's the Greeks, the Romans, the Far East, right? That idea of we're going to discipline ourselves and pursue something that is outside of ourselves, and we're not just going to feed into those carnal pleasures.
Yep.
And that maybe arguably the most valuable things that we see, especially as men, are where we have gone out, done something, experienced something, pursued something that is outside of ourselves, that does require a great effort, whatever that effort is, right? So many times when you're chasing that effort, it's not fun. It's not pleasurable, but it's necessary, and it is part of the adventure.
Yep.
So it's that recognition that, hey, yeah, it's going to suck. Okay, just embrace it. Don't lament it. Don't, oh, woe is me or whatever. Dude, nobody's making you go do this.
Yep.
You wanted to go do this, right? So embrace it. Make it part of it. Not that you're necessarily as crazy enough as, I'm going to celebrate, the masochism. And certainly I think people go too far. And there's, you're a psychologist for a living, and you see people that get into self-destructive behaviors for one reason or another. That's not what we're talking about here with embrace the suck. We're not talking about the intentional destruction of yourself. It is, oh, okay, I'm pursuing this external goal, whatever it is, and there's going to be challenge, suffering, etc. on the way there. Okay, we acknowledge that, and instead of running from it, hiding it, numbing it, we're embracing it and saying, this is part of the process, right? And so again, it's those things that are worth doing, those challenges we accomplish, all those things, they take effort, they take suffering, but instead of running from it, which is very Western today, right?
Yep.
It's anything to not feel pain.
Yes.
And that's its own problem. Instead of that, you're saying, yeah, it's not only okay, I'm just going to embrace it. That is part of the whole. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's it kind of led me into really exploring, the avoidance of discomfort and suffering and pain and all that kind of stuff because, I'm used to doing hard stuff, being a martial artist and outdoor advocate and all that kind of stuff. Like, I enjoy doing those things, but when I have some sense of control over it, it always feels different. Like I feel like, if I'm lifting weights, right? Obviously the next day I'm going to be sore. I tore my muscle fibers, and I know what's happening, but because I'm the one that's in control of doing it, I feel like, it just feels different, but the idea of I've got to climb this mountain, right? Like getting started and getting going always feels like so overwhelming, and then like you get halfway up and then you're like, oh, okay, I've got my groove going. I'm starting to like pursue this, feel better. You reach the top, you feel that sense of success, and then, you got to go back down, right? Or if you're hunting, then you got to go to the next mountain because if you didn't find what you were looking for. But the idea, like you were talking about in our Western culture, is typically to avoid discomfort, right? Like everything needs to be as easy as possible. If something's challenging, like let's make it easier for you, or give you accommodations for it, and that kind of stuff. And so the idea of embracing the suck, was just a different type of mentality for me. That like it's pretty pivotal and really helpful for me.
So let's look at something on what you just said.
Okay.
In modern society, we're all about avoiding the pain.
Yes.
One of those things, and I think this is again a detriment in our society, is we've become a Twitterverse, right? We're 30-second attention span.
Yeah.
And so when we're really focused on, I don't want it to hurt, I don't want it to hurt right now.
Yes.
And then the next 30 seconds, and the next 30 seconds. And it's a lifetime of 30 seconds instead of, it's almost like commercials, right? The challenging thing with commercials on TV, you have to tell an entire story arc in 15 seconds or 30 seconds or whatever, right? And we kind of laugh that at the Super Bowl, right, generally we see the best and the brightest of these creative ads that do an entire story arc in 30 seconds. Okay. Unfortunately, that advertising, that is like analogous to the way most people live today, right? They're endlessly living this very shallow, very narrow, very quick existence that their time hacks are so small that nothing ever really develops. Now, reflect that back to the idea of movies, or even before movies, where we had a lot more of plays, musicals, things like that, right? You had multi-hour story arcs, right? So long that every one of them had an intermission.
Yeah.
Like it was part and parcel to it. You knew that this was a 3-hour event. When I was a little kid, I remember the movie The Right Stuff came out, and it's like 3.5 hours long or something.
I don't remember that movie.
It early mid 80s or something, and it talks about, it was the U.S. space program, if I remember right. Anyway, it's this 3+ hour movie, and they had an intermission in the theater, so people could get up, stretch their legs, go to the bathroom, get another, refreshments, whatever. And there was all this talk about, are people really going to go to a movie that's 3 hours long? And it was a smash success, right? I mean, people wanted to hear or see the story, live part of it, right? It was really well done, and they went to it. But now, the vast majority of the movies that come out are 90 minutes. Yeah. And actually, if you look at their storylines, they're really like 30-minute episodes that got stretched into 90 minutes because they're so dumbed down. They're so simplistic. Okay, well, when your focus is just avoid pain, you lose an enormous 99% of the richness of life, right? If all I'm looking at is that 15 or 30 seconds or whatever, if the Twitterverse is my life, then how do you develop any depth, right? And this goes into the rest of your life, whether it's your personal relationships, it's your adventure, right? Can you imagine hunting in 30-second increments?
No.
Right. It doesn't even make sense, right? I mean, you first get out of the vehicle and you've arrived at your hunting spot. I mean, it's not uncommon to just take a few minutes to just relax from the trip and start to try to, become a little one with your environment, right? And then you're like, okay, now it's time to go hunting, that kind of a thing. So when we look at, and it's fascinating, I think, that we're seeing people starting to, they talk about rewilding and going back outdoors and all that stuff. And you're like, for those of us who grew up in the outdoors, played in the outdoors, whatever, we're like, I don't understand. But we're talking about people that like have never gone out and spent time. And I remember, I don't know if you pointed it to me or somebody did, people were talking about forced therapy of putting people outside and taking their phone away. Mm-hmm. And the patients were terrified by this, the idea that they were alone and that they didn't have a little box in their hand to stimulate them, right? Yep. And their entire world and their nervous system and their brain has become focused into this, this is 30 seconds living. You force them out of that and suddenly they're very uncomfortable. Yeah. So let's bring that back around. That embrace the suck idea is part and parcel to a recognition that life is a lot more than 30-second intervals. And it's only within the last decade or so that technology and everything else has gotten to us where we're so compressed that you can even have an opportunity to live in 30-second increments, because that literally didn't exist, right? Yeah. If we go back to, our childhoods and things like that, pre-internet days, right? 3 channels on TV before cable TV came in, things like that. Like, think about one of my favorite comic strips growing up, Calvin and Hobbes, right? Yeah. It talks about something about the endless time of summer days, right? Each day is forever long, but summer goes like that, right? And so when we had much less stimulation, also at times distraction, that would then enable us to, or provide us the space to interact, to grow in depth and all these things. And it's only this recent piece, and this gets into a whole different thing of, why are relationships so shallow and all these things today. Well, if I'm doing everything in 30-second sound bites, how can I grow in a relationship with somebody, right? Yeah. I mean, I think about some of the shared times you and I had out in the field. Just the other day, I saw the pictures again from when we went to the Fort Peck Reservoir, right? Yeah. And wow, I mean, what an adventure, up and down, left and right. I mean, that could be its own entire podcast just on that trip, looking at the pictures.
You remember when we were carrying the boat motor into the hotel?
Oh yeah.
And because we didn't want to leave it out in the truck because we were afraid somebody was going to steal it. And we were carrying it in there. I think you gave me one of the best compliments. You said, I've done more redneck stuff with you than I've ever done with anybody in my entire life.
Oh yeah.
As we were carrying that boat motor inside the hotel because we were afraid if we left it outside, it was going to get stolen.
And we're in the middle of America. I'm like, we're in small town Montana. I'm sure that like nothing would have ever been, in danger of anything out there. But unfortunate that, shows how we're so citified and that just gets to a whole different podcast on trust, high trust cultures, the lack of trust, the erosion of trust, all those things. But yeah, that idea, we went through that trip and just the weather on that trip. And let's talk about the weather, right? I mean, it pours down rain. We get out there, it snows on us. It's so bright and sunny. It's like 70 degrees and we're sweating, right? Like we got everything thrown at us. Yeah. And yet it was one of my favorite trips. Oh, and we didn't get anything, right? Yeah. But we saw some amazing animals. We saw a herd. The time where we're way back in that valley and this bull elk comes over and breaks the ridge, and I'm standing there in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. I've got nothing to hide behind, and he totally makes me. And you could have made the shot, right? You have a much, much farther bow shot than me. And he just looks at me and he's like, "Yeah, okay," and then turns around and just lopes up the mountain, gone. Yeah. And it was like that made the whole trip right there. Like, okay, I have my Mutual of Omaha moment. Like, that was amazing, and he's gone.
Yeah.
Right. And so, again, embrace the suck. Like I can remember we'd found the place where they'd been rubbing. You could smell the urine, you could smell everything, and you're like, okay, let's just overwatch this for a time. Let's see what's there, right? And you're at one angle and I'm at the other, and that's when the snow started.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not a little snow. Those weren't flurries. Like, dude, that was a full on, pounding little micro storm that came across the plains, and it dumped, and the wind's blowing and all that, and there we are, each in our little. I still have fond memories of that,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, here we go. So it wasn't pleasurable, but it was rewarding,
Yeah.
right? I mean, some of it was miserable
Yeah.
to the body, but it was, enlivening to the soul.
Yeah.
Like it was like, man, this is what we are out here to do. And even though we didn't even get a shot on anything.
Yeah.
It didn't matter.
No.
Like we had seen gorgeous animals. We had gone through it, it reminds me of like when we first, we crossed the lake in the boat and we nose in on the beach. And we're getting our packs on, and we know there's no water and all this, so we're carrying something stupid, some crazy amount of weight because we've got all the water and everything with us. And we take like 3 steps on the beach and the mud, right? Because it was the silt. And the next thing you know, dude, we're walking with 20 pounds of caked mud. So like each step until we can get out of the miring and then get all the mud off the shoes, right? And then start hiking in. And okay, we laugh about it. Now we laughed about it then, right? Because we're like, okay, this is what we're here for, right? This is the adventure. Okay, so dial this all the way back to the embrace the suck. I would challenge, you can't have an adventure if there's no suck.
Yeah.
Like you just can't. I mean, let's go back to all the really good stories, the ones that have even been made into movies recently, right? The biggest one probably being the whole Tolkien bit, right? That adventure, there's lots of, and it's so easy to sit here on the couch where we're comfortable and we're watching them, when they filmed it, they traipsed across New Zealand, right? And it's rugged. Okay, how do you think the filming crew felt? Much less the actors, right? But okay, you got to get out there, you got to film it all, right? There was some serious suck that went into making the movie. Okay, I'll bet you the people that were part of that movie, that to some of them, that they're never going to forget that. That could have been the highlight of their career. It would have been jaw-dropping amazing. Yeah. And for the last 20 years or whatever, New Zealand's had this booming tourist industry predicated on the Lord of the Rings because people see it and they're like, I want to go where it was filmed because it's so beautiful. But again, it's not that it's easy. It's not that it's pleasurable. It's that there is a suck, but you don't get to all the really cool stuff without the suck.
Yeah.
And for some reason, this is rattling around in my head. It's like, it's so easy today because life is shrink wrapped and packaged. You're a cook, right? Like you had real cook training, real chef training, I should say. Okay. Yeah, sometimes peanut butter and jelly is all you want because it's easy. But have you had a memorable PB&J? I mean, like you're like, yeah, that was the pinnacle of PB&J.
No.
Right, because there's no adventure there, right? Now, when one of my daughters came over and she babysat for Athena.
Yeah.
And she had brought some food and all this, was expecting low maintenance, right? And like you came home or did whatever and you're like, hey, I'll make you some food. She came home, she was raving. She's like, holy cow, Dad, like this was, right? And for you, it's your normal day. You just whip something up, right? So again, going to the experience piece of, you're used to it. You embraced the suck on cooking because to you, that's just your jam. You're like, yeah, okay, whatever. And that would have been really hard for me.
Yeah.
Because that's not what I do, right? Now, what was so fascinating about it was getting the third-party view of it, right? She got to benefit from something that you didn't think was terribly hard because it's your normal jam.
Yeah.
Right. So she comes home and raves to me about it, and she's like, we need to cook like this. And I'm like, great. That's your thing. You start, recipes. It's chemistry. Go have fun.
Yeah.
So again, coming back to that embrace the suck piece, it is nothing worthwhile without strain, stress, whatever. And much like the PB&J, there's no like memorable Oreo, right?
Yeah.
It's a shrink wrap cookie. Like, who cares?
Well, unless it's a freeze-dried ice cream sandwich.
That's not an Oreo. That's the difference, right? And we've even joked about like I mean, Backpacker's Pantry. It's decent food.
Yeah.
It's really good in the field.
Yeah.
Why?
Oh, it's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But have you ever had one back here? Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's fair.
It's different when you earn it.
It's different when you earn it.
Yeah.
And that's the key right there. Embrace the suck. It's different when you earn it.
Yeah. There's a theory. I've heard them talk about it on Meat Eater, where they talk about high quality fun versus low quality fun. Right?
Yeah.
Low quality fun being like you ride a roller coaster, right? And most people don't say, "Oh, remember that time we rode the roller coaster and how great it was," and all that kind of stuff. But the high quality fun is those trips that have suck in it, all right? Where it rains, it snows, it sleets. You have to carry 40 pounds of water into the area because there's no water anywhere, and you set up your tent and everything's cold and miserable. But afterwards, you have the best stories,
Yeah.
all right? You have the best memories and all that kind of stuff. And so that's the high quality fun versus low quality fun. And I think we live in a society that focuses a lot on the low quality stuff.
Well, and maybe that's where we should dwell for a second. Why are they focused on the low quality
It's easy.
stuff? It's easy.
Yeah.
Right? There's no suck.
Yep.
And if your whole goal is no pain.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the old joke, no pain, no gain.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not 100% true, but it's true for a lot of things in the world, right? Like,
Yep.
if it's worthwhile, it's probably going to take some sweat equity.
Yes.
And again, and this is what's so funny, and this is why mental framing is so important. When your comment was, embrace the suck, like, I've never heard this. What does this even mean? And then you tell me these stories about, like, you're hunting, from young age, and you're out there, like, crazy hours and crazy weather and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, that kind of must have sucked. And you're like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Because you were enjoying it.
It was normalized for me.
It was normalized for
Yeah.
you, but I'm looking at that and going, wow, that would have sucked.
Yeah.
But you're like, no, dude, it was a great hunt. I'm like, okay, so again, we're coming back around to the key mentally is framing. And whatever your situation is, embracing it, embracing the suck and saying, okay, here's reality. Now I can choose to respond one way or the other. And this gets into that whole thing. I know we've talked about this kind of extensively. It's that space between stimulus and response, right? Something happens, and you have an opportunity to process that before you respond. And then the response you're responsible for, right? So we're not talking about slapping your hand down on the stove and pulling it away. We're talking about things in your life happening to you. You get a chance to respond. The one I like to use with my kids is, if I knock you down and break your arm, are you mad at me? And they're like, what? I knock you down and break your arm. Are you mad at me? And they're looking at me quizzical. And I'm like, it all matters on the frame of reference, right? If I just knocked you down because I pushed you out of the way of a car and saved your life, even though I broke your arm and you hurt, you might be really happy that I did that, right? Stimulus and response. What is the appropriate response? If I just did it because I'm a jerk, well, now you're probably not going to be so happy with me.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, looking at and framing, and this is the enormous superpower of the human mind, is we can choose to look at something, and how we choose to frame it then unpacks or unlocks the superpower of unlocks. Well, then how are we going to respond to this, right? And this was supposed to be about suffering. And, somebody mentioned this the other day. It's fascinating that, throughout the Old Testament and then certainly in the New Testament, we have examples of healing, right? And people are healed. Heck, Lazarus raised from the dead. Okay. But let's just look at the healing one and the physical pain. You have Paul, who ends up with this multi-decade long ministry, right? I mean, by the time they kill him, he's, 60 years old or something, right? So he had 30, 40 years of ministry experience, right? It's a long, long time, right?
Yeah.
And through that, flogged, shipwrecked, all these bad things that had happened to him. And one of the things he says is he has a thorn in his flesh, a thorn in his side. Okay, well, they talk about all these healings and all, okay, well, if he was, quote unquote, so close to the Lord, why wasn't he healed? because it wasn't in the Lord's plan for him. Right.
Yeah.
So here, I've prayed to have it removed, all these things. And the Lord said, no, it's for my glory. Okay. And when I was getting ready to come over here today and thinking and praying on this whole podcast on suffering, I was really dwelling on this and okay, Lord, what are the lessons here?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, go look in Scripture. What do we see in Scripture? How do we see this play out in Scripture? And this is it's almost the counter to the prosperity gospel. So on the Sean Ryan show recently, he's had several people come on that have talked about Christian faith and stuff. And he had a guy on a couple months ago that was very much like attacking the prosperity gospel. And then he had the younger guy on that you had just
Bryce.
I think it was Bryce.
Yeah.
You're like, this gives me hope for Gen Z. Like these kids are on fire, right? And he had sat down with that same prosperity guy, and he was talking about him. He's 89 years old, and he's kind of weeping about certain things. And I need Jesus every day, and so maybe we don't know. We got to be careful judging others, right?
Sure.
We don't know what's going on in their life. But when we go and we unpack that prosperity gospel, and it's the whole name it and claim it, and God wants to bless you and all that. Okay, well, hold on. God, as our loving Father, He wants to bless us, but because He loves us, that doesn't translate necessarily into health, wealth, and fame.
Yes.
Right? And that's the big deal there, is to be like, wait a minute, let's go back and look at Paul again. Okay. Dude got a lot of bad stuff, challenging stuff happening to him, getting flogged, things like this, beaten, all these other things. That doesn't match the prosperity gospel.
Yeah.
But obviously Paul was pretty locked in with the Lord and doing a lot of good stuff. So when we start to, again, challenge that and unpack that, you're like, wait a minute, how does the prosperity gospel, match up with Paul's life? And you're like, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right? And so, we're here in America, and we're very blessed to be in America. If you haven't been overseas in a third world country, that's something that I think every American should experience. That's one of the things that I don't agree necessarily with everything that the Latter-day Saints do, but the idea that they, those kids go out for, I think, 18 months or something and go to foreign lands, that is excellent, because people don't realize how, quote unquote, unnatural it is to live in America. Like, they don't know what life is like, and they don't know the struggles. They don't know all war torn, like the idea that we live here in peace and have for decades to centuries. That's not normal to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Like, I was just talking to someone who, let's see how I can say this. I was just talking to someone who was in the eastern portion of Europe recently, and they were talking about how surreal it is because it's first world country and all these things are going on, and yet the kids in the street are playing and people are doing whatever, and there goes a Shahed flying overhead, right? And people are like, whatever, and they just go back to their lives because they can't control it. But that's, if you go back to the history of our recorded history of the world, that's the norm, not Pollyanna America with white picket fences, because we live in a very peaceful society compared to the vast majority of the world. Right? So when we look at suffering, I think another huge challenge we have as Americans is we're looking at that as an American, where the rest of society and everything that's held up is, avoid all pain, 30-second Twitterverse and all this. And you're like, well, how can I reconcile pain and suffering with it? And the point is that I would challenge is the pain and suffering and the rest of that's reality. A vast majority of the way Americans see the world, that's the unreality.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. There was something that I heard years ago that kind of put things in perspective, where it said, the only difference between an adventure and an ordeal is your attitude. All right. And when I heard that, I recognized, like, oh, okay, it's definitely, it's how you perceive it, is how you're going to process it and respond and react to it. All right. And so, more recently, when I had my surgery, and you and I were having that conversation, and you told me, you said, take it easy, right? Like, one, you don't have anything to prove to anybody, right? Like, take your time, and allow your body to be able to heal. But the thing that really stuck with me was, you said, when you're really hurting, just make it to the next meal. All right. Just focus on making it to the next meal. And when I was in the hospital and it was really, really bad, it was like, okay, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, breakfast is coming at 9. All right. So like, let's just get breakfast. Right. As soon as I had breakfast, then it was like, okay, all right, lunch is coming at noon. Let's just make it to noon. All right. And breaking it into those smaller chunks made a huge, huge difference. All right. Where before I felt like days, where I couldn't get out of the pain and I couldn't get out of the discomfort, and I just like ruminated with it, and it became, where it became unbearable. That's why I went back into the hospital.
Yeah.
But when we had that conversation, you explained it that way. It was really helpful.
So I'd love to hear you unpack this from the psychology side of things. The human ability to withstand pain and suffering is crazy. I mean, it's huge. And you just sent me the Brené Brown thing where they were talking about the Stockdale paradox, right? And that quote is amazing, right? You can't lose the vision that you're going to survive this, and yet you got to recognize that it's going to hurt right now.
Yes.
And the tragedy of that whole thing is Stockdale committed suicide.
Did he?
He did.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he survives, prisoner of war camp. He survives all that stuff. And then later in life, he commits suicide.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just one of those weird things. How can you survive all that, and then what wears you down, or why do you fold in on yourself? We have an epidemic of veterans committing suicide.
Yeah.
It's through the roof, right? And lots of theories onto why or why not. But one of them is certainly the loss of brotherhood, of connectedness. Hey, when we're all out there, we're all in the suck together, and we know what our purpose is. My targets are close, right? I got to make it to the next meal and keep my buddies alive, right? And that, and that's your world.
Yeah.
You come back here, and now you've been through a meat grinder, and then you've got all the trauma to deal with, and then here it's like, what does it matter if I live or die? Like, nobody cares, right?
You become isolated.
And then amplified by the isolation,
Yep.
right? Unless you're tied in with other groups, with other people, it just doesn't matter, right? There's, why does it matter kind of a thing, and that starts spinning in your head. And it's funny, I'd never put these two together. I saw the same thing happen actually in Buds. You're in there. I'll go back to Hell Week. When I went through Hell Week, they had an El Nino, El Nina, one of those things. Anyway, I didn't know any better. I was from Ohio. And so we class up January 2nd or whatever, and we go through. And it is just raining cats and dogs, and it's just cold, wet rain. Dude, I'm from Ohio. Like, okay, at least it's not snow. I don't know any different. And we were... The class proctor is talking to us right before we go into Hell Week, and he's like, nobody here has any reason to quit. Like, Mother Nature has already thrown at you for the past 6 weeks worse than anything we could do to you during Hell Week. Don't bother quitting. Right?
Yeah.
Now, did that work out? No, of course, a bunch of guys quit. But it was a really funny statement, because I'm like, what do you mean? And somebody had to like pull me aside and be like, that's not normal San Diego weather. And I'm like, well, what is for the winter time? And they're like, no, dude, like it's like sunny and beautiful, like 364 days a year. Like the fact that it's been just nasty for weeks, that's not normal.
Yeah.
And again, as an Ohio kid, I'm like, well, at least it wasn't snow. Like, okay. That's framing, right? I didn't know it was supposed to not suck that much, because that was not where I'd grown up. Having a senior moment here. How do we get into this? I hate when that happens. So when we're looking at framing, we're looking at suck, we're looking at what happened. We look at this purposeful thing, and we talk about guys being overseas. It really sucks. They get back here, and then the pressure's off, and they kind of melt. And maybe that's the Stockdale thing, right? He didn't have the stressors. I can remember being in buds and guys, they're doing fine, and then suddenly they get inside their head.
Yeah.
And maybe this is the time thing you were talking about too, where they're like, I can't do it. And it's
Yeah.
like, somebody gave me the advice when I first got there, like, dude, you just got to make it the next meal. I'm like, oh, okay. And then time is short enough that no matter how much this sucks, it's going to end, and they're going to feed you.
Yeah.
Okay. So that the suck will end, or there'll be a break or something, right? You just recognize this is not forever. And when you lose that, suddenly the now becomes permanent.
Yep.
And that's the lie, right? That the now is permanent. No, it's not, right? I'm hungry now, but after I eat, I won't be hungry, right? Or whatever. I hurt now, but it's probably not going to hurt the rest of my life, or whatever. Or maybe it is going to hurt, but okay, whatever. So that idea of permanency, we lose our sense of time, and suddenly we're in this, we get into this instant mental spiral of I can't do it. I can't do it forever. Well, of course you can't do it forever. Nobody can, right? And this gets into the when they start talking about the training for like resisting interrogation and all that kind of stuff, and this is all open source. You can go read it. It's not that you won't break. It's what can you do to make it harder, right? How can you maintain your dignity, or how can you put up a fight? Everyone has a breaking point. Everyone has a breaking point, right? And depending on your day and everything else, your breaking point might be not where it is tomorrow, right? We have kids, right? We have bad days, and every one of us has had a bad dad moment where you snapped at your child. We've had bad husband moments where we've snapped at our brides, and you're like, what? In retrospect, you realize I just made a mountain out of that molehill. But it was me, right? So if you can stop in that moment and then zoom out and look at yourself from the outside and be like, wait a minute, the world really wasn't that messed up. It was my response in that really tiny moment of time, right? That was it. That was my response, and that was the fail, right? It was my response, my fail. Because if I look at it in the big scheme of things, okay, it wasn't that big of a deal. So that's, what I'm getting out of a lot of this is the challenge of immediacy versus permanency, of recognizing time. And that's where like the idea of I just got to make it to the next meal and I'll be okay.
Yep.
And that applies to a lot of things in life. You're just having a tough day. Okay, this too shall pass.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
And that's a lot of people that I'm working with, is recognizing how we speak about things, because typically when we're in those places, we're speaking in absolutes, right? Always, never, the idea that the pain's never going to end, right? Like, this is so overwhelming that I can't tolerate, I can't stand it anymore, those types of things, right? And the idea if we can extend it as long as possible, even with suicide, right? Telling people like, I'm not going to do it today. We'll see what tomorrow looks like, right? And the more that they can extend it out, right, the hope is that their brain can switch out of that limbic system that is being activated for that survival, that fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, right? And that we can think more logically about things, right? And that rationalization is such an important part of it. And that's me recognizing like how I spoke about things, it changed the way that I felt about it. All right, because if I focused on just the pain, just the suffering, all right, and that's where like me having like a little log and recognizing like I have had good times, like I've been tracking my steps over this whole thing. So anytime like I went and did laps like around the nurse's station, that kind of stuff, I turn on my watch just to see like how many steps I was getting and that kind of stuff. So since I had surgery May 5th until today, I've done 77 miles.
Wow.
I mean, there was 2 days in the hospital like where I couldn't walk. Right? They were shooting me up with fentanyl and like I couldn't move. All right. And so like I didn't get any miles in that day. All right. But even then, like I still, when I started feeling a little better, I'd get up and they all complimented me about like, you're pretty persistent about your walking. And I said, well, everybody that I've talked to that has had this surgery done, they've all said like walk as much as possible because that's going to be so beneficial for you. All right. And so like, I knew that if I tracked it and I could see the progress, that it made me, it just created some encouragement, right? And then like I was talking to my dad last night and I told him, I said, I'm at 76 miles, all right? And I was like, and he said, you've been walking that much? he's like, I thought you were pretty much incapacitated. And I said, I'm not incapacitated. I said, I just have to like break it into little chunks, right? So do like a quarter mile, then I have to go lay down, right? Ice my back and relax. And then I get up and I go do another quarter mile. But I've been diligent about that type of thing. And the tracking it has been helpful, right? Because then I know that I'm making some effort, right? If I didn't have that.
Well, yeah, let's build on that though.
Okay.
Tracking is a tool.
Yes.
You're doing the work.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's not miss that. It's just a tool. Now, it's a super important tool, and it lets you mentally be like, okay, this is what I've done.
Yep.
And that's great. This is why, they tell you when you're working out or whatever, get a log, right?
Yeah.
Because it always matters. Okay. Even if you never review it, I can go back to that logbook and look and figure out how many pounds I've lifted or whatever it is. So the tracking is vital to your success. What I don't want to miss is you refuse to be a victim.
Yeah.
You're putting in the miles. You're not in a wheelchair where someone's pushing you for 77 miles. No. You're like, I need to do the following, right? Let's key in on those words. The empowerment is here. It's internal to you. And you're like, okay, I'm in control of me. This is going to be good for me. I am going to put forth the effort to do it. Now, you are embracing the suck. Because it wasn't pleasant, right?
No.
Sometimes just getting up was painful. But you knew long term, even if it was only 30 minutes, hey, for the rest of my life,
Yep.
this next 30 minutes of suck is going to be a net positive. So I'm going to go through it banking on that future.
Yep.
Okay. So that is like right there. That is the embrace the suck right there. And your encapsulation in your brain of I'm empowering myself. I'm going to get up. I'm going to do this because everyone I've talked to said this is so vital for the future.
Yep.
And then you executed on it. Now, the fact that you happen to have the tracking on it, that's like icing on the cake.
And that's people that I work with. Here's my 2:00 alarm to take my medicine. People that I work with, I have them track their days, right? Because when I talk to them, very commonly it's, if they're having a bad day, all I hear about is the bad stuff, right? Like today, this whole week has been awful, nothing's gone well, I have nothing to look forward to. And then we start breaking it down. It's like, okay, well,
chunk,
yes,
chunk.
right? And then it's like, oh, okay, well, I did have a good day this day, or, this is the thing that happened that was encouraging, or this nice thing happened with this person. And it's like, okay, that's how we get out of those funky headspaces, right? Is we have to recognize that, like, it's not forever, right? And very, very few things are always a never, right? And so if we can switch out of that, right, that becomes very helpful. And that's where that CBT comes in, that cognitive behavioral therapy, in regards to like recognizing that I have control over how I think about things, which affects how I feel about it, right? Which affects how I react and I respond to it.
So let's dwell on that for a second.
Okay.
And now this is going to be part 2, where it's going to get fun because now you're taking your happy pills.
I get to take some morphine, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah. What's the time until it kicks in? So
It's pretty quick.
all right. So when you're talking about the programming, because that's really what it is, right? We're meat computers, and we're programming, and we get the choice of how do we program ourselves.
Yes.
And this kind of goes back to, I'm not going to do it justice, but there's this whole comment that magic is real in this way.
Yeah.
When you look back on the history of quote unquote magic, and people were very worried about the words that were said, as if uttering words could magically make things happen.
Yeah.
We understand that no, that doesn't work. But at the same time, it is magical in the brain. And when, as you were describing with those the patients, when they're locked into those absolutes and those whatever, right? The words that they're saying are reinforcing the belief, right? And that's the downside of that magical loop is you're pushing yourself in a negative reinforcement spiral because it hurts. Oh, it's forever, right? And you just are spiraling. And unfortunately for a lot of people, that ends up in suicide. And yet the magic is also on the other side, that it hurt. And then you're like, okay, I know that this is going to be good for me. I'm going to do this, right? And you work yourself up. So it's really that choice. It's that space between stimulus and response. Do you choose to, spiral down, or do you want to do the hard work to spiral up? But either way, you actually still control your own fate. Right?
Yeah.
This is that whole, I think it's Henry Ford that said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right either way.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, we get the choice of how are we going to respond to this? And none of us bats 1,000, right? I mean, we all have our own problems, and we all have good days and bad days. It's vital. And it's vital. This is the whole thing we're doing now. It's vital to have community. It's the vital to have. This is a whole different thing we could talk about with relationships. I was just watching the Alpha Path guy, and he was talking about the epidemic of men in the church not having any relationships, any deep relationships. And it was, how many guys are in your phone that you could call at 2 a.m. That would either pick up and or drive to your house, right? And that's a fantastic metric. And it's a two-way metric, and this is what I mean. How many guys are in my phone that I could call? But the other side, how many guys am I available to that if they called me, I'd get out of bed?
Yeah.
I'd go to, drive over to their house at 2 a.m. And I was like, whoa, that puts a whole different light on it. Wait a minute. It's not just about me.
Yeah.
It's about them. Am I making myself available, right? And we're told to, this gets into the whole thing about we're supposed to be bold in our faith and all these kinds of things. Sometimes I think bold in the faith isn't, walking around, talking about Jesus. It's living it. It is the, hey, man, does he know that he can call me at 2 a.m? Have I told him, hey, look, if something's bad, pick up your phone and call me.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, I'll be here for you. Challenge me. Let me know, right? And that puts a whole different spin, a whole different view on it when it's am I willing to put myself out there to be that guy for somebody else?
Yeah.
And I think that also helps us get out of the, oh, woe is me, whatever. I have a purpose now. My purpose is to be available for other people if the call comes in. Oh, hey, now we're back into I have a purpose in life. I'm in the trenches with people. I'm not alone.
Yeah. Well, I think unfortunately as men, we don't always communicate that stuff, right? We don't ever talk about it like in really vulnerable ways, like when I used to drink, all right, Friday, Saturday night, like I was geared up because it was like, oh, I'm going to get some hug from my friends and like, we're going to do the I love you, bro, and that kind of stuff. But, after being sober and then, you get older and that kind of stuff, like when we do the activities and that kind of stuff, you do have vulnerable conversations. That's the reason why I do the therapy the way that I do is because, when you're tired and you're worn down and you're around the fire and that kind of stuff, you have really good conversations, right? But we don't typically pick up the phone, right, and say, hey, I was just thinking about you, man. I just want you to know, like, I love you and I care about you, and if you need something, I'm here for you. Right? We don't typically do that very often.
Yeah, and why? What does society tell us about that, right? We're coming out of, growing up, the idea that, oh, a man is strong, and a man is this, and a man is that. And so many of those things we know are false, right? It's the famous speech by Schwarzenegger, right? Self-made man. And he's like, that couldn't be anything more from the truth, right? And he starts talking about everybody that poured into him and helped him out.
I don't think I've ever heard that speech.
Man, it's on YouTube and it's fantastic.
Okay.
and it's the I'm not a self-made man.
Yeah.
Right. Here is the community, right? And so I listen to that, and it's the challenge of am I putting myself out there for other people, or is it all about me?
Yeah.
Right? And so that we're coming out of. A bunch of the Hollywood and what we grew up with, what we were programmed with as kids, was that whole stoic and you've got to be whatever. And it's like, no man's an island. I mean, we love movies. We love movies, right? And 300, great movie.
Yeah.
Terrible history, great movie. But even the original history is fascinating too, right? And why as men, why are we drawn to war? And I think part of it is it's the brotherhood. When you're in the trenches with people, you're there in the trenches with the people. Like, the rest of the world doesn't matter. Right?
Not to cut you off, but I learned some science behind it recently that kind of put it in perspective. Is that when men are doing activities together, you're producing something that's called vasopressin, right? And vasopressin is that thing that like bonds us together.
Oh, cool.
All right. And so learning about that, it was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But then it made a lot of sense in regards to like, why is suicide so high for veterans when, you know, they're around people constantly, right? They're producing this bonding agent, and then all of a sudden they're in complete and total isolation.
Yeah. Right. And what do we know about isolation, right?
It's the worst.
Cruel and unusual pleasure.
It's the worst thing you could.
Even in the prison system.
Yep.
Right. Isolation is set aside. So, and here people end up imprisoned by themselves because they don't interact.
Yeah.
Like they literally could just go take a walk in the park.
Yep.
And they don't. Right. So, yeah, the science behind it, I think that's something that we definitely should be looking at. And the idea, when you were talking about the shared suffering, guys willing to talk and open up around the campfire, probably because they just got their big dose of vasopressin through the day, right? And we saw that even with the kids, right? When we took those troubled teens up and made them hike all the way wherever, right? Now, boy, that one kid was he struggling. And but still at the same time, you know, for several of them, that'd been the first time that they had been out like that.
Yeah.
And you could kind of watch them start to blossom in what was going on with them. And again, you have the shared suffering and the idea that, hey, wow, there is more, right? I'm getting outside of myself. I'm not just trapped in my head. It also occurs to me that the very fact that you are putting yourself out there, right? You have to do physical activity, like making them hike and carry a backpack and all that. It's really hard to stay locked into your head, man, when you're just, when it sucks so much that all you can think about is the next step in front of the next step in front of the next step in front of the next step. You're like, okay, man, I'll get you out of your head. Watch this.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is such a useful tool in that sense. And then also that feeling of accomplishment, right? Like, I mean, we put some miles in.
Oh yeah.
You know, we put some miles in, and I told every one of those kids to like train ahead of time, right? And I don't think any of them did. Well, maybe one of them did, because there was one of them that did really, really well, right? But you know, the one that was struggling with the video game addiction, like I don't think he did anything physical whatsoever.
I'm gonna bet he has not done 77 miles like you have in the past couple of weeks.
Well, you know what? I got an update recently.
No. I mean, prior to that trip.
Prior to
right?
No. He didn't do anything.
Right.
But I got an update from the family, and that kid is like in love with the outdoors and hikes and all that kind of stuff, and does a lot of solo stuff. And the family was asking if he could help out with any trips. Right. This was a kid that like would not stop playing video games like all night long. It was affecting his schooling and all that kind of stuff. And I think he just graduated last year and started doing really, really well. You know,
and his whole diet was like Hot Pockets or whatever.
Yes.
Like, oh yeah, he was like the stereotype
of a video game addict.
Oh,
yeah. But now I think he's got it under control and is doing really, really well and is in love with the outdoors. And I think he's pursuing like working for the forestry department, that kind of stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, which is such a great update to be able to have. We were going back to the vulnerability part. You know, like I called you recently and said, "Look, man, I'm suffering. Like I'm really having a hard time, and I need some time with you. If you'll come over and let's just talk." But it took so much for me to make that phone call. Like, you know, there was a night that, you know, like I was in extreme pain, you know, and I literally went to the grocery store and I was walking around at 3 o'clock in the morning because there was nothing else that was open. And I was telling myself, like, I'm completely alone. I'm doing this by myself. Like, this isn't worth it. Like, if this is what my life is, I don't want anything to do with this anymore.
a bunch of absolute statements.
I was stuck in it.
Yeah.
I was stuck in it bad, you know, and I went home. And I went to sleep in the trailer because I felt so bad that I kept Danielle awake because I kept getting up and down because I just couldn't get comfortable. And I remember I made a phone call, or I texted you and I said, you know, I need to talk with you. Like I just needed the conversation, you know. And when we talked and you told me like I'm always a phone call away, right? I'm here for you and that kind of stuff. It's what I needed, right? But how many times do people not do that?
So why was it so hard? No, because I think that's the part that's the key right there.
Yeah.
Right. So whether it's you, whether it's the vets, right? Why is that reaching out so challenging?
I think for me at the time, because I didn't see anything outside of the suffering, I was so overwhelmed with just the consumption of being miserable that like I wasn't thinking of like my tool set, and I wasn't thinking of anything outside of what I was experiencing in that moment. Right. And it wasn't until I laid down in bed and I just thought like, when you and I have conversations, I always feel better. Right. Like we just have good conversations.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just like, okay, I feel like maybe that's really what I need right now is I just need a Doug talk. Right. And, sure enough, that's really what it was. Right. And then, I had surgery coming up and I started recognizing like, I'm in pain and I'm suffering right now, right? But like I have this thing that could potentially help, right? And I was able to look at pull myself out of just the moment of it, right? But yeah, I mean, I kind of thought about it. Why was it so hard to make the phone call? And I think it was stepping into that vulnerability. I think it was stepping into the vulnerability and just saying like I'm hurting, and like yeah.
We have this false, and the enemy is always beating us down with this one. Don't be a burden to somebody else. Don't be a burden.
Yep.
And the core of the message is completely false. As friends living in relationship with each other, we have a duty to spend time with each other.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to call him because I'm just going to be complaining or whatever. Dude, how long since we talked?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what we talk about, right? It's, hey, how are you doing? What's going on, right? It's living in relationship. And, it's fascinating. You go back again in the New Testament, and it talks about Jesus sending him out. He never sent him out alone.
Yeah.
Right? Like, ever. Never walk alone. Like, that's the whole point, right? The guys that are suffering with porn, the guys that are whatever. If you know you're accountable to somebody,
Yep.
that is a huge tool to breaking those habits, drinking, porn, drugs, whatever, because you're not alone.
Yep.
Right? And somebody's there, and they're going to get in the mess with you. They're going to be in the mess with you, and that's the whole point. Isolation is maybe the most powerful tool of the enemy.
Yeah.
Because it's from there that I can start, and we see that in nature, right? When nature carries its course, the wolves don't go after the strong ones. What do? They stand around the herd, and then they isolate the weak and the old, and then they attack them.
Yep.
Okay. So like this is not this isn't hidden from us. Like we see this happening, and our pride, our society, our whatever is telling us, don't reach out, don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah.
Like that's not, it's not scriptural, it's not smart, it's not healthy. We know all those things. Something you said about being in that place and not at the time not having access to your tool set. This is why checklists are so important.
Yep.
And why I think we would be all well served to have some posters around the house to remind us of truths. The idea of a flashcard that, hey, wait, if I'm suffering, go through this. Step 1, 2, 3, right? It doesn't have to be a lot, but if you're in that spot where you're spiraling or whatever, you can pull it out and I don't need a checklist. Dude, pilots use checklists all the time. It doesn't matter how many decades they've been flying. You absolutely do a checklist. Why? Because the penalty is high.
Yep.
It's part of the job. You always do the check. You trust the checklist. The checklist was made in a time where you could be in peace and you could make sure everything is, and you can double check with your friends and all that. Yeah, this is what we should do. Okay, this is what we all agree should be done. And then pilots go through and do it, right? And a lot of those lessons were born in blood.
Yep.
Okay. Arguably, we should be living our life with several of those checklists. You get up in the morning, you do this, you don't do that, whatever, right? So that you have this pattern, but you also have a tool to fall back on that says, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is X. Okay, now I just got to remind myself, right? And then that at least gives you that chance to break out of that. And for me, I'm like, oh, I should call someone. It's right there. It is okay to call someone. Oh, yeah, it is okay to call someone. Okay, I'm going to call someone, right? But when we don't have that, we don't have it brought up in front of us, we get into those spirals of the forever statements, the absolutes, and then, you're stuck in your hole.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, so the victim mentality is, why is this happening to me? And being able to switch it over to what is this trying to teach me is something that was really helpful for me. Even before this, right? So like when the back injury happened, or I mean, I've been dealing with it for 20 something years, but when it went out the last time significantly,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I started really questioning, okay, so what is this thing trying to teach me? All right. And I recognize like I'm not really fully present with my family. I'm struggling with the emotional regulation part because I'm
Mm-hmm.
so uncomfortable. All right. And I need to slow down. Like, I went from graduate school to moving to Massachusetts to becoming really, really involved in martial arts, in training like 5, 6 days a week. And then, from that to going into running and, like, getting to a place where like I ran a marathon. And then, after the running, I think is when the injury came up, and then it was like I don't have this other tool set of like working out, right? Like what do I have to be able to emotionally regulate when I can't physically do it, right? And then feeling like I'm not strong, right? And feeling like I'm weak in some sense was like really really like getting in my ego, and then recognizing like okay, like I need to work on some of the mental stuff, right? I need to be okay with being present without having to exhaust myself, right?
There you go.
And working on that mindfulness has been one of the tougher ones, right? Is like being present in the moment
Mm-hmm.
without without like exhausting my nervous system to where like I'm just like I'm okay with being with it, right? And it's weird because like you put me in a hunting blind, I can sit in a hunting blind for like 12 hours, right? No issue, no problem. But put me in a room, where I just have to be present with my family, like I just want to get up and walk around, right? Or I just want to fidget, or I want to do something, right? That mindfulness, it becomes so much harder in those situations for some reason.
Yeah, I think you're actually hitting on several different pieces there. Um, the as guys, we feel this burden, right? We go back to the book Wild at Heart,
Yeah,
right? And how we're made, and we want to slay dragons, and we want to prove ourselves, and right? Do I have what it takes? The core question, right? I want to push, and yet that can become its own idol, right? Um, I don't remember where I learned this one, but you go through SEAL training, and somewhere in there, somebody made the comment: it doesn't matter who you are, where you are. There's always somebody bigger and badder than you,
yeah,
right? Like, don't ever believe you're the baddest man in the room. That's the easiest way to get yourself killed, kind of a thing,
yep,
right? And it's having that humility. You may be highly trained, and there's people better than you.
yep,
A buddy of mine just replied something similar to me quite recently, and he said, "You're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are." And he was relating it to a sports thing,
yeah,
but he was also then relating it to other parts in his life, and it was like, "You're never as good as you really think you are." The flip side is you don't suck as much as you think you do.
yeah,
And I was like, wow, I've been really dwelling on that part to be like, hey, okay, if we can embrace the truth in that statement, then looking at the rest of the life stuff, like, okay, when we're 20 and we have to go, charge off and do these things, or 30 or 40, and then where do we get into as we're aging gracefully? Maybe gracefully is not even the right word. Aging honorably, and you see it's different for different people, absolutely. But at hitting mid 50s, I can't demand of my body what I could at mid 20s
yeah,
or mid 30s, right? Like my brain is still like, let's go do this. My body is like, sit your butt down. No, right? And that's part of the reality as you get older, right? And instead of fighting it, learning to embrace it, right?
yeah,
Make room for the younger guys to go out and be younger guys. Like, absolutely. Cheer them on, be their, you know, be their cheering squad, help them, mentor them, help them be awesome like you were awesome
yeah,
at that age, right? But I mean, it's so scary, sad, cringe when you see the people that are way too old for their activities, dress, language, whatever, and you're like, oh, dude, that's no, that like, it just, you look at it and you're just like, oh,
yeah.
that's not right.
You see that with old fighters.
Yeah, and some of them you do, right? And they don't they still are acting like they're 25. But we see it not just with fighters, right? We see it across society in various ways. The other thing I want to talk about was the presence piece. Why is it such a challenge? You can sit in a blind for 12 hours, but being with the family is hard. And I think I know one of those reasons, at least one of them.
Okay.
When we're out, we're hunting, we're whatever, we're back into that. My life, what I have to deal with is pretty shallow, pretty narrow, pretty confined. I'm in the foxhole, right? Like what I can see is what there is. And I know exactly why I'm here. There's a purpose, but it's bounded purpose. My job right now is to sit here and wait for an animal.
Yeah.
Cool, I can do this, right? So that's the whole, do I have what it takes? Yes, I do. I can nail this one. Watch this. I'm going to sit here and wait for the deer to come. Okay. And so it's very concrete. And it's very well defined, and we know we can succeed at it. You throw us in a room with family, much more than just with other guys, right? Because guys can, what's the old joke? Like, guys can hang out for 5 hours, say 10 words, and be okay with it.
Yeah.
And how was it? Man, it was great, right? And women are like, what? And we're cool. We had our time together, even if it was just watching a movie or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was an intentional. We know we spent time together. We're good with it, man. We checked that box, right? Got the bro piece. Yep, absolutely. And it works. And you're laughing because you know it works,
true.
right? Like viscerally right here, you can feel it. And you're like, yeah, I know that one, right? Okay. As soon as we're in with our family, with our spouse, with our children, we're never not on duty.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, right? You're always going to be the husband to your wife. You're always going to be the father to your children, right? It doesn't matter whether they're grown, they've got their own kids, whatever. You will always be dad. You will always be husband, right? And that carries a huge amount. It's not necessarily the burden, but it's responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. So we want to slay dragons, right? And so when we have a wife and a child there and whatever, we're like, okay, what do you want me to do? Because we'll go do it, right? And this is that big joke. Wait, am I listening or solving? Right? How many times have we gotten in trouble because, well, why didn't you give me a solution? Oh, I thought I was only supposed to listen.
Yeah.
Why aren't you listening? You're solving. Like, oh man, just tell me which one I'm supposed to be doing.
That's why Danielle and I have the agreement. We ask ahead of time, right? Do you want me to listen? Do you want me to try to solve the problem for you? All right. And that
clarity
that helps so much.
Right?
Yeah.
Clarity. How about that, right? Just managing my expectations. Just tell me what my job is, man.
Yeah.
Right? I want to succeed. Tell me what my job is so I can succeed. And that's so how we're wired.
Yeah.
And that, and it's beautiful and glorious in its own way because it lets us do the crazy things, to go out to slay the dragons, right? And it gives us that external view to defending the family where you're like, okay, I know my job is to go do this. I'm going to go do it. That's terrifying. It doesn't matter. I'm going to do it because I need to do it for my family. And yet at the same time, and this might actually reflect back onto the veteran suicide piece. When you lack that clarity and purpose, you're just afloat.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, what is the expectation? How do I manage the expectation? I don't even know what the expectation is. Okay. Well, now you're floundering, and how can you succeed? You can't. It is literally a no-win situation because there's no definition of winning.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes in a marriage, winning is, I just love my wife today. That's it. Some days, bad days, it's I didn't snap at my wife today. Maybe I didn't give her the best compliments, but I really won today because I was in a bad mood and I never chewed on her.
Yeah.
And I can go to bed and be like, yes, today I won, right? Okay, again, framing. We're back to that framing piece. So when we're coming back to all of this, and I think about those kids we went out with, and you were teaching them, like, here's your little checklist, right? That is so vital to get in early in life.
Yeah.
So that people know how do they win, right? Whether boys, girls, doesn't matter. It's the idea of, here are tools. Here's how you can win. Go out and win. Be successful. And manage expectations, right?
Yeah.
Am I listening or solving? I love that one.
Yeah. And we're way more inclined to follow through with things when we have a checklist. All right, because we like that we get that little dopamine hit when we scratch something off of that checklist that we know that we accomplished something, and it creates more of that drive and that motivation to keep pursuing and finishing all the rest of it. I did a little research, like for what is the antidote for suffering, and it's gratitude.
What is the antidote for suffering?
Yeah, and it's gratitude. Gratitude is the antidote for suffering. So if we can focus on what we have versus what we don't have, right? That's the antidote for that. All right, like when I'm in pain and I'm in suffering, being able to recognize like I got a beautiful family, right? I've got people that love and they care about me, right? Like so before surgery, I took 5 or 6 months off of social media, right? So like I wasn't on any of that kind of stuff whatsoever.
Okay.
All right. And so then, Danielle was like, maybe before you go into surgery, you should just tell some people, right, that like you're gonna have surgery, right? And I was like, man, I kind of didn't want to get sucked back into it.
Yeah.
But then it was kind of like, yeah, there's people that, I don't talk to every day and they'll probably be interested in it. And so I think I posted about it, and Danielle put some stuff up about it. And I heard from people that I hadn't talked to, that I was friends with 20 years ago, that they were saying like, hey, if you need me to, I'll get on a plane and I'll come down there and I'll take care of you. All right, like I will fly.
Wow.
I will fly down there. I can cook meals. I can help out, with your kid. All right, like I don't know if your wife would think it's weird, right? But like, I'm happy to help out in any way. And like the outpour of like consideration and care and compassion, that kind of stuff, was pretty amazing, right? And it helped me recognize like I'm not really alone, right? And like I got into a place where I was just like, social media is stupid, like I don't want anything to do with it whatsoever, right? It's not real life. But like what I experienced with that, it was like, oh, okay, maybe there is some good parts of it, right? Maybe there are some good parts in regards to like, these are people that, some of them don't have their phone numbers, right? But like, we're connected through social media, right? And getting to hear that and feel that, like, it was pretty big for me, right? And it was something that was really helpful. I've been trying to be mindful in regards to like how I engage with it, because I do know like what it does for our brain and that kind of stuff, and so I do put timers on it, and I'm probably using it more than like I should currently, but I also feel like in some ways it's been nice to be able to interact and connect with people in that way, where before I had our conversation, I was like, I'm completely alone. Nobody cares about me. Like, this is awful. There's no point to living if this is what life's going to be. I was in probably the worst place I've been in since I was in my 20s, and did try to commit suicide. Okay. So recognizing that, and then, once you and I had our conversation, I did start going back over my tool list and recognize like, these are the things I'm not doing, right? And these are the things I need to start implementing. And then I wrote down on my phone specifically, like, if I'm having a hard time, this is what I need to do, right? If I need to go for a walk. If I can't walk, right, then maybe I just need to spend some time listening to like some peaceful music and focus on my breathing. Right, and I've been practicing breathing techniques more than I probably ever have before, right, and it's been extremely helpful for me.
Yeah, it's fascinating, the whole science now, the neuroscience behind the whole breathing technique stuff.
Yep.
That now they can measure it, and they're talking about triggering this system or suppressing that system or whatever. Where 30, 40 years ago it was like, oh, that's all hooey or whatever, and they didn't know what was Not that it wasn't effective, they just didn't know the science behind it. And now they've unpacked the science behind it, and you've got a lot of people who are like, wait a minute, there's like good reasons to be doing these techniques. And now they're teaching them throughout the military in various things. Yeah. Like, this is how you deal with this. This is how you keep from getting overwhelmed. This is what you do. And, the thing that we got to remember is the tool is the tool. Whether you're struggling, because somebody just cut you off in the parking lot, or you're taking enemy fire, either way, the systems in the body are reacting. You need to control your systems. So use the tools that are available. Why throw away things that the Lord has provided? Like if this is a trick that works, I mean a technique, not a trick. There's no trick to it per se. It's a technique. Go do it. Okay, great. It's no different in that aspect. Then we know exercise is very good for the body, right? Sitting is the new smoking. Oh, it's really bad to sit around all day. Yeah, you think? Like, when in history have we ever just sat around all day? Never, right? Like we're not built to be sedentary creatures. So with that idea, I'd encourage more and more people to learn these tools so that they can. And I'm like you. I'll get through something. I'll be like, dude, I should have practiced my breathing techniques, right? I could have been box breathing or something, right? Like, and you laugh, but it's like, oh, yeah, gee, if I'd just done a little breathing, like, 2 minutes worth. Yeah. Like, that's it. That's all, like, it's enough to overcome. And I'm like, 2 minutes, like, how do I not have 2 minutes between meetings? Yeah. Like, okay. And there was just a post on LinkedIn by a guy, and he's all like, yeah, they taught us to do this stuff in combat. He's like, I should be using it between meetings at work. 2 minutes, sit down, tell people to leave me alone, close my eyes, practice some breathing techniques, and be like, okay, now I'm ready for the next meeting. Yeah. Oh, that's a novel idea. Yeah.
When you're talking about tricks, the one that I learned recently is the parasympathetic sigh. Have you heard of that? Mm-mm. So it was Andrew Huberman. I heard about it on his podcast. So he was saying that if you take 2 inhalations, all right, what it does is it relaxes your autonomic nervous system and then starts pulling you out of your limbic system and activates your frontal lobe more drastically because like our body automatically naturally does it. So it was saying like if you look at kids when they're crying and they're overwhelmed, right? They go yeah. Right? And what that's doing is that's getting massive amounts of oxygen into their lungs to be able to like help slow their systems down, right? So we can trigger that ourselves by doing the same thing. So what it looks like is I'll go,
oh, okay.
And those 2 deep breaths, like I feel my system calm down way faster.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. It's the one that I've been doing the most, and
that's
really,
where
really
you're
like
also
it.
supposed to. The exhale is supposed to be longer.
Yes.
Than the inhale, right?
Yep.
So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes, and blow
pause.
All your air out.
And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause 6. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the drug working?
Oh, it's been working for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I really wanted to share this with a lot of people.
Okay.
Right, because you've been like a mentor, even obviously as a close friend. I learn a lot from you. And the thing I appreciate is like you always challenge me as a man, and you hold me up to a high standard. And it was interesting. I was talking to another friend of ours actually this week, and he was saying, that really you were the person that changed his life. Right, he came to Christianity, like he said you set the model in regards to how he wanted to be as a father, like you set the model in regards to like how he wanted to conduct himself like as a husband and all these types of things, because he met you when we all went hunting together, and then he came over to your house, right, and you guys had a great dinner and all that kind of stuff, and he saw like how your family functioned and worked and everything, and he was like, that's really what I want. Right, and Danielle and I have had the same conversation. Obviously, you're my daughter's godfather, right? So I have a tremendous amount of trust in you, right? And because of that, like I'm willing to be able to learn from you. And this is the reason why I wanted to do the podcast, is because I wanted to be able to share it with so many other people, right? Because you're one of the best people that I've ever met and I've ever interacted with, and I get to know. I feel very fortunate that you and I are friends. Right, and so I wanted to share that with more people because I think it's pivotal. It's really what a lot of people need.
Humbled. Also, you need to cast your net a little wider, man. If I'm the pinnacle, it's really funny you say that because I can see me.
Yeah.
I can see the real me, all the failings,
sure,
all the stuff, and by the grace of God, other people don't see that stuff, and they're seeing a lot of the blessings. And I've got to remind myself that, hey, yeah, you know, it's the joke about the Bible being an acronym, right? Basic instructions before leaving Earth.
Yeah, I love that.
You know, thanks for the compliments on the family and stuff. I attribute it all to Jesus and the Word. If like the book of Proverbs, if you actually read a proverb a day and start trying to apply it, one, it's really challenging.
Yeah.
Really challenging. But two, you're like, wow, this stuff actually kind of works.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, watching how you have grown, how Danielle's grown, how you guys have grown together,
Yeah.
but each as individuals, how you've blossomed in parenting, which is just beautiful. A lot of that, it isn't me or Michelle or anybody else. It's you guys are embracing the suck. You're doing the hard work. You're studying scripture. You're trying to understand what it's actually saying. And then you're applying it to your life, right? It's not just head knowledge, it's heart knowledge. And you're working on, what does this mean? How does this work in my family? And you're seeking it outside of yourselves, right? You're going to men, me, others at your church, things like that. You are doing the hard work of growing, and that's bearing fruit.
Yeah.
Right? You give me these great compliments. You're seeing the fruit of decades of work.
Yeah.
Right? You know, for those that are you know, on the fence or just hearing this for the first time, the idea of, when's the best day to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the second best? Today, right? You plant the tree today, right? And maybe you won't grow and you won't get its fruit, but your kids will.
Yeah.
Right? Again, and it's kind of funny how we've come full circle. This goes back to how we started. When your timelines are 30 seconds, why bother to plant a tree?
Yeah.
Right? What's the purpose? Well, there isn't one if you only live in 30 seconds. But the world is great, and it's huge, and it's mighty, and it's wonderful, and it's much bigger and longer. And so, and the point on planting trees is, you plant the tree because it's the right thing to do, right? You do these things because they're the right things to do.
Yeah.
And Lord willing, you'll reap some benefit or some fruit from it later. And everyone has bad days. That's the other one, is you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody has bad days, right? I've had some horrible husband moments. I've had some horrible dad moments. They've been made a whole lot less horrible because I've unpacked them with my family.
Yeah.
And you don't hide from them. You don't run from them. You go back. You apologize. You own it. You work to not repeat it.
But most people don't do that.
Right? They don't embrace the suck.
No, but they won't take accountability for it, because, like, the idea of having to confront those things feels so overwhelming that it's easier to hide.
I don't think it's an overwhelming thing. I think that's bullshit.
Really?
Sorry, I'm going to throw out that.
No,
That's
you're
bullshit. And here's why. It's their pride and their ego.
Well, yeah, which I agree with that. That's part of it, but that's what creates the avoidance of it.
Oh, correct.
Right.
But it's not that it's too hard. It's straight out, I don't want to do it. And there's a difference.
Yeah.
There's a difference between, I don't want to run a marathon. That's you have to be purposeful and intentional to go run a marathon. That's totally different than, I stepped on your foot, but I don't want to say I'm sorry. Those are two completely different things. And they're not opposites. They're orthogonal to each other. They're very, very different.
Yeah.
And the lack of humility in people not owning their stuff, their baggage, right?
Yes.
I think that's the biggest one. It's funny. I was just talking to another team guy just yesterday with him and his wife having coffee, and we were both joking and laughing at how horrible we were as young frogmen. Like, I look back on I just went and had my 30th reunion, and I just cringe at who I was as a young team guy, and it was really important and cathartic at my reunion to be able to go up to a few guys who were really impactful to me and say, I am so sorry. You were trying to speak wisdom to me, and I missed it. But you planted the seed.
Yeah.
Because I can recognize it years later. And thank you so much. And a couple of them were like, it's all cool. And some of them were like, what are you talking about? But that it's owning your stuff.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what age you are. In fact, I think that's one of the most important things that we need to be teaching our children and holding ourselves accountable to as men. Dude, own your stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody has stuff, right? Don't hide from your stuff. Just own your stuff.
Yep.
Right? And then you can work on your stuff because everybody has stuff. This whole, like, I don't have any stuff. You're like, you're an idiot. Of course you have stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody has stuff. So, where we grew up to hide everything and, we don't talk about, polite people don't talk about this stuff. Well, yeah, how did that work out, right? We'll end up latchkey kids and all this other, like, it was terrible.
Yeah.
So we are not doing that with our families, right? We're confronting the hard part. We're spending our time, our energy, our effort, unpacking our stuff with our spouses, unpacking our stuff with our kids to be like, not that they're our therapist, to be like, no, I own this one.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have said this to you and I'm sorry, right? It was inappropriate or that's not what a dad should do or whatever.
Yeah.
But we own it. And this is the psychology piece. Much when they talk about PTSD and processing it immediately, and it doesn't have this long, right? If you get it within the first 30 days or something, it has a much less impact. The same thing applies in your marriage and with your kids. Like, I remember bad dad moments, and my kids are like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, seriously?
Yeah.
Or they're like, yeah, I remember that. That wasn't a big deal. And I'm like, it was catastrophic. And they're like, no, it wasn't. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
Like, but right after it had happened, I'd owned it. I'd done whatever. And so they were like, yeah, okay, I wasn't really scarred by it.
Yeah.
Because I owned it. This gets into the avoiding pain. We're back to where we started on the podcast. For one reason or another, pride, ego, whatever, or they're just Sallies, they don't embrace their own pain. And the running away from pain is the root of all kinds of these problems.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's what the avoidance piece is I don't want to confront these things, right? Because I was trying to understand, like, what makes somebody just like up and leave their family, right? And never talk to their kids or see, their spouse or whatever ever again, right? And when I started learning about attachment styles, right? So you have secure, avoidant. What is the other one?
I don't know.
Secure, avoidant, anxious, right? And then you have a hybrid of both, right? And typically it's that avoidant type that just won't go towards those things, right? They won't go towards the things that's making them uncomfortable, right? They would rather leave, right? And not be a part of it versus like having to confront the thing that was making them so uncomfortable, right? Having hard conversations.
But let me clarify.
Okay.
Is there a difference on avoidance because they don't want to embrace the suck versus there's nothing I can do about this here? The right answer is to walk away. Because I think that can be, I'm thinking about this and reflecting like to my own life. I had a challenging relationship with my dad.
Yes.
Things got a lot easier when I left the house. Like there's just nothing I could do about that, right?
Yeah.
So it takes two to tango. He doesn't want to tango. Then I'm out. Like that's a survival mechanism, right? And I'm going to go, right? And I can love him now and honor him and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, that doesn't mean that like I want to spend 24/7 with the guy, right? So how do we differentiate avoidance as a method of survival versus this failing to embrace the suck? Help me out there.
The difference is it maladaptive in the sense that it's affecting your life in a negative way, right? So like, are there situations that we have to avoid, right? Like, I mean, if you're never going to get through with somebody, right? Okay, you can put up a healthy boundary and say like, I'm going to choose not to continue to try to engage with you in this way.
It's a boundaries question,
right?
not avoidance.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the maladaptive part would be, like if you just never talk to them ever again, right? Like I'm just going to cut you out. I'm not going to tell you why.
Almost like passive aggressive.
Yeah. Or stonewalling, right?
Okay.
So stonewalling, very commonly happens with overwhelming engagements where it's just like the person just shuts down. Right, and they have that blank expression on their face, and they're not able to their partner's not able to get anything out of them.
Okay.
Right, and that's where that whole still face experiment happens with babies. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Unpack that one.
So
That's terrifying.
a parent would engage with the child, they're playing and everything, like with a baby, and all of a sudden they just have like a blank expression come over their face. All right. And then the child is looking at them and they're laughing and they try to get them to play. And the parent is just like staring at them with nothing. And then they keep trying. And then after a while, like the kid just becomes so overwhelmed and starts bawling hysterically. Right. And it's because a blank face, we don't know how to read it. Right. We don't know what it means.
And there's no connection.
There's no connection. There's no emotion. Right. That's the reason why like facial expression is such an important part of like our engagement with people because it activates those mirror neurons in our brain that let us know like that we're connecting, right? Like when I laugh, right, or if I get this big emotion, if you're engaged with me, you're gonna do the same thing, right? Even like if I kind of go forward a little bit, you're gonna do the same thing. Yeah. Right? And that's how we know that we're connected. But if we don't, right, if you just have this blank expression, right, and nothing's happening, we're going to lack that engagement because we don't know if safety wise, right, is this person like okay for me to be around? Is this person safe? Right. So like in couples counseling, the Gottmans, they identified what they call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Right. So it's criticism, contempt, stonewalling, and what's the 4th horse? Criticism, stonewalling, contempt. Criticism, stonewalling, contempt. I don't remember the 4th one.
Not sure.
Okay, but anyways, the stonewalling is one that very commonly happens, right? Because of that feeling overwhelmed, right? And so like I'm just not going to engage with the person, right? I just have this blank expression, and very commonly what happens in the relationship is the other person has to react more, right? So they argue or they become more vile towards that person to try to get something out of them, right? So then you end up in those loops in that way. It's how you pull out of the stonewalling is learning how to be able to emotionally regulate. All right, as you learn how to be able to calm your system down and how to be able to like engage with the other person,
Okay.
right? Because what would happen, like me and Danielle's relationship is I'd get done with work in the very beginning of our relationship, the first year or so. I'd get done with work, I'd been therapizing people for 10 hours, right? And I come out and I don't want to talk to anybody.
You're drained.
Yeah, I'm tired. Right. So then, I come out and I just sit down and she's like, how's your day? And I'm like, it's long. Right. And she's like, did I do something wrong? Right. Like her system is saying something's not right. Right. Because he's not engaging with responding. You. Yes. I'm not as responsive. I have the blank expression, all that kind of stuff.
Meanwhile,
I'm just tired.
You're just tired.
I just want to spend time. I like her presence. I want her to be there with me.
Come here, I'll hold you.
Yeah,
but
I don't want to talk.
There's no more words.
I don't want to talk. I've been talking for 10 hours. All right. But there was no communication there. All right. And so then
when she kept past it?
Yeah. Well, so she kept asking me like, are we okay? Right? Like, are you upset? Are you angry with me? And it was like, no. So then I realized like, oh, okay, what's happening is like I'm stonewalling. And so when I get out of work and I'm drained or anything like that, I can say like, hey, you know what? Like, I love you, but I don't want to talk. Like I'm tired or I'm worn out or I just had one of those days where I heard some like really, really, really bad stuff. And I just don't want to like people. I just want to be present with you, right? And being able to communicate that, it made all the difference because it regulated her system, knowing that she's safe. There's not going to be any type of like weird reaction later on because of it.
So you're managing expectations,
and we're co-regulating with each other, right? Because like when we don't know what's going on, right? It's like you're talking about PTSD. Trauma is the stuff we don't see coming, right? It's the car that hits us that we didn't see coming towards us, right? And 2 people can experience the same thing. One person can have trauma and the other person walks away, they're perfectly fine with it, right? And what they've seen is emotional resilience is a big part of it, like optimism. And there was the 3rd one and it's failing me probably because of morphine, but I can't remember what the 3rd one is. Optimism. Yeah, I can't remember what the 3rd one is, right? But like how they perceived it and how they were able to emotionally regulate afterwards made a huge, huge difference, right? And like that optimism part of it, there was another one. I can't remember what it was. But the optimism part of it is being able to recognize, like, okay, this was awful, right? But like, we're not going to live in that awfulness forever.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. Well, and so let's tie that back around.
Okay.
When you were in your dark spot,
Yep.
you had no optimism,
No.
right? And then you learn to regulate, you pull out your tools, you start practicing, and suddenly there's optimism. And so you're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to live here.
Yep.
It sucks now. I'm going to embrace the suck. I'm going to do my work. But there's a future.
Yeah.
And we stop with the permanent words, the always, the and, the whatever. No, it's going to be okay. Like, there's more there than just this.
Yep.
And your horizon then opens up and you get to see more. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
We hit on a lot of stuff.
We did. Man, this was a lot. Maybe we should do this more often.
I think we should. I think
Maybe we should have notes.
Yeah, I definitely should. There were things that I probably should have expanded on, and maybe next time I won't be on morphine. I'll be able to remember stuff a little bit more. But yeah, I love you, dude.
Love you too, man. This was good.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be helpful, and hopefully it helps some people. Well, let's close it out with a prayer.
All right.
Okay.
Heavenly Father, thank you for my brother. Thank you for bringing us together so many years ago over boxing and bacon. That is another story. And Lord, thank you for helping us to grow together. That iron sharpening iron doesn't always have to be sparks. It can be, a file and a blade. And that the point here is that we're intentional and we are living together and reaching out and strengthening each other. Lord, thank you for this blessing. And thank you for turning Sean's challenge into something beautiful that can help him, help others. Lord, we pray for wisdom. We pray for healing, and we pray for grace. All this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.